Check, check, check. 1, 2. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Hey, hey. Got it. Check, check, check. 1, 2. Good. Awesome. Check, check, check. Yep. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Buenas tardes, ¿me escucha? Estamos probando 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, probando, buenas tardes, probando, 1, 2, 3, 4. Probando, 1, 2, 3, 4. ¿Me escucha? Uno, dos, tres, cuatro, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Ese es 4.
Sí. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 1, 2, 3, 4, probando, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, probando, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, probando, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Tenemos el 4 para inglés entonces.
¿Así? ¿Does it work? ¿Funciona?
Te voy a recomendar una cosa. Ya lo que tú hablas por ahí está abierto todo el tiempo. Eso quiere decir que se va a escuchar en el streaming todo el tiempo. Dígame. Tu micrófono ya está abierto todo el tiempo y ya estamos viendo. Entonces, si necesitas hablar algo, cualquier cosa, si quieres.
Está en la web. Aunque lo apague aquí.
Vas a apagar o prender para que no te escuchemos nosotros.
Aquí ya hay diferentes. Ya es compulsor. Cuando ya apague ahí, se apagó. Cuando todo lo que es interpretación sí va a estar abierto.
¿Me puede escuchar? ¿Me escucha? 1, 2, 3.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Is the microphone on? ¿Me escuchan?
Can you hear me?
Yo creo que todo el mundo está todavía buscando.
I think that everybody is just
los derechos a la privacidad de las personas, según uno de nuestros senadores, viola la cuarta enmienda de la Constitución americana. Pero el Congreso hasta ahora ha decidido que no y se han negado a desmantelar la organización. supuestamente impide las transacciones financieras, se retrasa el movimiento, etcétera, etcétera. Pero hasta ahora eso no ha quedado demostrado. Quizás detienen los negocios de los congresistas, es verdad, pero yo aprendí algo en México. Jalisco nunca pierde. En otras palabras, los bancos siguen haciendo dinero. Entonces, FATCA está aquí para quedarse. Si los Estados Unidos y a las mujeres
But I don't know if from who are here they have a question to start with, or what do you want to do? Do you want to start right now? Ramiro, did you announce the session during the conference? Okay, thank you. Yes. That's what I'm afraid of, that they don't gonna know that they need to come here. Buenas tardes, bienvenido. Good afternoon, welcome.
Bueno. ¿Sabes qué? Vamos a comenzar porque
You know what? Let's start because I don't know if the other people are going to start, so I don't want you to miss the whole coffee break. So the purpose of this session is to give you a little bit of an update about FATCA, what is new about. So Gafi, if you have any question about what is going on, I know that we are in a certification year. A lot of you that started in the beginning, we need to get certified if you're coming from another country, and we're close to the presentation of the reports at the end of the month. And I don't know if you have questions about it, but what I want to touch today are 2 points, two main events that we had in 2023. What is the focus that we're going to expect for 2024, and some frequent question that we have had from our clients to see if you have any key questions. The key events on 2023 is that we have seen on one side trying to go back on the compliance of the tax compliance fact and with the government and the IRS. In fact, and Gafi is here to stay. FATCA is here to stay. I'm gonna invite you to the QR code. I want you to get into that QR code on your phone, and there is a FATCA questionnaire that we would like you to fill out and give back to us. If you can read it and let me know if I can help you anyhow, there is any gap on the compliance program. What kind of movement we have seen to go back with FATCA? Well, the division in the political situation in the United States, in the political party that are here is the Democrats, and the out party is against everything that is this political party doing, and we have seen that, and we see that all the time. Rand Paul, that is one of the libertarian politician, he is trying to go against FATCA for violation on privacy, but there have been several facts that they are reaffirming the compromise of the IRS and FIMSA. So keep pushing FATCA and applying the law. What we are seeing in the United States is that the Justice Department, together with FIMSA, they have been applying not only their own governance, but also in transversely in the other areas as well. The State Department, that they do the list, they are involved. The Commerce Department, between 15 and OJ, they are applying all the norms. So a violation on the sanction, it could be a violation in a tax compliance, and also it could be a violation of anti-money laundering. So they are applying that law every time, even more, and we are seeing it in different initiatives, like for example what we call the Corporate Transparency Act, CTA, that we have seen recently. This is a FinCEN initiative, and this applies also to the tax evasion part, because we need to recognize who are the beneficiaries of the entity. Is the registration of the end beneficiary that at the beginning of the year you need to declare. So for example, under my name I have an LLC, so I had to go in FIMSA webpage and put my name and the name that is behind me, and all the entities of the United States, they need to start doing that. And any entity that is operating in the United States that is an external or a foreign institution, they need to do it, and not only because of the money laundering, and also because of the tax evasion issue. So every American that has an LLC or you have behind an American citizen, eventually they need to register. Another focus that we have seen, and it applies more the CONIGA countries, is the IRS is insisting in trying to find out the team of each American citizen. The IGAs usually had a clause that until 2017, those countries that signed the IGA, they need to have have the compromise to find all the income of each one of the American citizens. They keep getting more time and time and time, but I don't know if you know, last year they present two forms, and that's for the IRS to understand who doesn't have a TIN. But that's also make mistakes happen, because when you go to with those digits with the IRS, it's gonna cause error, and they're gonna think that report is not valid. So the IRS reaffirmed this year they don't gonna recognize the uncompliance or significant compliance not to have the TIN. Every entity, they need to find their own TINs. They need to have profits to be able to yearly find a TIN, keep looking at the records, and etc. So they haven't stopped to trying to find the TIN of each one of the America citizen or entities. They are also trying to be more firm with the entities that they sponsor. So, for example, if you have a GIN number if you're a sponsor of the entity, or it's a LE or LME, for example, but if you sponsor another entity, you need to have the GIN SP. So, if you have a GIM SP, but if you don't have any SF, so a sponsor entity, they're gonna take your the sponsorship GIN. So they are trying to certify that the use of GIN is for the use that they want and they have to have. Those are more or less the events on 2023, the most important ones. I don't know if you have any question or something that had happened in your institutions that you would like to ask about. But what I'm going to touch on right now, what do we expect for 2024 and moving forward? The IRS makes public a guide that is the Dirty Dozen. That's the number of a movie, so it's very interesting or funny to call it that way. But the idea is that Dirty Dozen they have identified the 12 crimes or areas that they are looking that is more tax evasion, and they have indicated in this guide that they're going to keep focusing on the assets, the higher assets on the outside of the United States. So for you, that you have a private bank or entities or judicial structures, the IRS is going to be focused on who is there, if behind that there is any American citizens that is doing a tax evasion. Plus, the laws changed last year, but I think in 2022, the law changed the partnership relations, so they need to make this file and declare that. It's very important for you guys that you only have a domestic customers. This change is not that relevant, but for you that you have a private bank, an international private bank, for clients that come in a financial center from another country, you need to be aware about this point. And the IRS has said that they're going to put more priority in detection of the international tax evasion. That's a lot of politics, because if they are trying to capture American, that creates a reaction. But inside the United States politics, there isn't a lot of people that are going to complain because they are getting taxes from people of outside of the United States. So if they are focusing on that, they're going to focus on the place where it doesn't get that political reaction. Other area very important, I don't know if you are familiar with Willie Rondon. He passed away recently. He was an IRS investigator. And he was talking that inside an IRS there is a very strong focus on the virtual asset. I know that in certain countries they don't allow it, but if in one of your countries you have a virtual asset, the IRS is very focused on that. They are treated as a property, the digital asset. It's not a property. So whenever you sell that, you can get capital gain. And that creates a tax assets. So you need to declare that. So some people that have sell and buy things digitally, they need to find out and they need to declare if they have they're gonna give you a 1099. So if you exchange it with a private entities or another kind of transactions, and even worse, some cases, you forget about the code of the wallet, and the fact that you don't know what is inside your wallet, you are not exempt of making a report to the IRS. So for people, the United States citizens, even if they have crypto money or digital money in another country, for example, in El Salvador, there are people that are trying to invest there because they are allowing people to invest American money there, and they have accounts in Salvador. They need to be worried about, they need to really look into all the activities and report it to the IRS, because everybody has the feeling that those assets, the digital assets are anonymous. Not at all. On the contrary, there is a record that you cannot change, that you cannot modify. You need to notify with the code of your wallet with the person, and once they do that, they can have records of all the transactions you have done with that code. And the IRS is getting very extremely sophisticated, and they have been using a lot of particular technology to be able to track that, and they are very aware about the virtual asset, and that is very important for FACTA and all the control. So, for example, in Europe, where a lot of people are participating, that they are very worried about because of tax evasion through crypto money. And the normative, the AMLA normative that they brought last year, they are asking and they're requesting the crypto investor, they need to keep following the IRS rules. In another area where we are seeing and we're going to be focusing more is the online banking. Through the pandemic, that have grown even more. Everybody's doing online banking, and that is an effect of the money laundering, and also because people try to evade taxes, and FATCA also. And why? Because when you involve an online client, the declarations, you do it digitally. It's very important that you are sure that the form that you are finding, the auto certification digitally, it complies with the needs, the IRS needs. You are allowed to do a digital signing, but there are some steps that you need to comply with to assure that the digital form is correct, what the IRS is requesting. For example, you cannot have just one box saying yes. No, it has to have to sign saying on the penalty of perjury, you need to sign and you need to follow the certifications. You cannot follow FATCA certification and ask some other question and the signature at the end. No, because the signature is not associated with the statement of the certification. So those things are very important to make sure that you check on that, because it's very important, because that's a failure that they can detect and you can be at fault. Other risk of the online banking is to know where the client is physically when they are opening the account, and the FATCA or OFA or IML is very important. If you have it, if you are capturing the address, GP address of the clients, you need to have a way to associate that information with the wallet of the client, because if a client they identify himself that he's not a citizen, and they open from the United States that account and all the transactions come from there, that creates an alert that possibly the client that the client is residing and living in the United States. Because remember, the norm and the IGA says that you can trust the declaration only if you don't have other information on your record that is different from that. So you need to validate the information with the other information that you might have. And if your IP address and the IP address tells you that that client is always in the United States, that's a contradictory information that you need to take into consideration. So those are the areas that we are seeing, like the most interesting areas at the moment. And finish with some of the frequently asked question that we have had from our clients. It's very cold in here. Everybody wants probably covered using a jacket. So some people that have asked us, for example, the obligation of to have procedures and politics and what are their requirements. The IGA or the norms are they are not very precise, so exactly what are the policies. For example, FinCEN is very prescriptive. The manual FFI, it gives you details, exactly what you have to have. The IGA and the FAFTA laws are not as precise, obviously with the diligence that we have, but and previous records, but they need to have a responsible official, and that official needs to create a program of compliance enough to comply with the norm. So that is a little bit vague, but you need to make sure to use a risk-based approach that you really have political and procedures in place. And as we said with everything, to have good politics, even though they are not that precise, but if there is any violation of the IRS, is investigating the fact that you have politics and policies down is a very good defense. So also, we had several questions about the requirement about FACA. There is not an obligation. The only obligation that you have written is to have a responsible officer. Also, we have seen that a lot of clients, they are not doing the controls internally that we consider important. For example, evaluate the gyms of the financial entities that they have account on the institution, because if that institution loses the gyms, it's a NPFG, no participating financial institution, and those institutions, they can have a retention. Even the contract with IGA, and if you don't do the retention, the bank that processed the transaction, they need to comply and comply with that retention. So it's important the FFI that they have account in your institution, they are properly certified, and if they have another FFI, that the gym is still valid. Another point that we had several. They were not our clients at the moment, but they became our clients when they lost their gym, because they were not aware about the FAFCA portal, because the responsible officer left at the moment because they forgot. Because they said, well, we signed up for FAFTA many years ago, and they forget. No, it's not that something that you do maybe a year ago and you forget about it. No, FAFTA is something that you need to renew and pay attention every year. Sometimes you need to check, because sometimes they send you emails and you don't receive the email, it goes to spam or whatever, but everything is in the FAFTA portal, and you need to review that information and make sure that you don't have any email or any information about the IRS that they require any information from you. So the countries with IGA, they only have the requirement of identify and do the due diligence. But the ones, other countries that they don't have IGA, any payment that you do to another person, they need to make sure the financial status or the tax status of that person, because if you pay to users that they are not clients, they could also have a require of due diligence to make sure that they're not making a payment to an American customer. Another question that is very, very frequently is FAFCA responsibility. Somebody has a SSN, a social security number. Even though that is something that you could investigate, it's not considered an indication. So it's totally possible that a person that was resident in the United States and had IRS responsibilities, and they was not citizen but lost the citizenship, but the SSN, it keeps being valid for that person. It does never expire. So they can, even if you're not working in the United States, you have a SSN, Social Security number. So if a client gives you a Social Security number, doesn't mean that that they are resident. No, they can still be no residents of the United States. So if a person is citizen or resident of the United States, if that person doesn't have the item, you can use that item in the W-9. The United States has the Social Security number, so they are residents and they pay tax in the United States. The TIN or the ETIN are the other two. That is an identification of a person that they don't qualify for a Social Security, but they have tax responsibility. So that number you can put it on the W-9. The problem is that normally those people, they are not residents. And some information, or when they file their taxes, not all that information needs to be retained, only for the money that they have made in the United States, not outside of the United States. But the item can be used in W-9 if they give it to you, and only for information. The item start with the number 9, and that can expire. So somebody that hasn't declared taxes for 3 years, they need to validate the item, so it's still valid. What else? The last question that we have had recently is the digital signatures and what are the requirements. And we talk about it, what we were talking about, the geolocation. So those are all my remarks. We have a few minutes before the next session. Any question? No, some things that we have been focused as SINIGA, they are strongly about, they haven't changed any requirements on retention. Retention-wise, only one entity that is going to make the retention, that is the United States. Under IGA, you don't need to retain anything, and without IGA, you cannot retain. So the only one that is going to be holding is the American entities, the United States entities. But the countries with IGA, they just need to keep having the control, identifying the U.S. citizens with the crypto digital money. I know Bolivia, you guys don't allow it, but some other countries, yes, you need to make sure that they have that available. And this year in 2024, they brought out a new W-9. They just put a bigger line 3 that they apply. They put more requirements. So the W-8, they changed it like 2 years ago, in 2021, I believe it was. They have 6 months to start using the new form. What else? The W-9 never expire. If you don't change anything, you don't need to write it again. But new signatures after, you can find it in the new form. It got published on March, so until September, you need to start using the new form of the W-9 for your new customers. You have it available in Spanish. I don't know why they put it, the W-9 in Spanish, but that's the situation. What else? Any other question? Perfect. So everybody is understood FAFTA. So I love it. So let me repeat. The QR code that is on the screen is a questionnaire that we're offering, where if you complete it and you send it back to us, we can help you if you have any gap on your problem that we need to take care of it. We have a lot of some trainings in material, in fact, material, if you're interested, especially our certification, professional certification for the responsible officials and some other responsibles of the implementation of the problem. I'll stay here behind, and if you have any other question, I'll stay behind and I can answer your question. But the rest of you, if you're done, you can go out to drink and have a coffee before our next session. Thank you very much to all of you. In Martinez, they have requested to make a panel regarding two examiners and compliance officers to the anti-money laundering and then the financial of terrorists and proliferation of mass destruction weapons. I'm gonna see here some other, we start with women here with Natalia, she's an attorney. She's a representative of CIF, the Commissioner Office of Puerto Rico, what is for another jurisdiction the superintendent or the superintendent in Puerto Rico. She have worked in banks and right now she's in the public sector doing the leadership in the work of regulation in the island. Amaury is also an attorney. I'm an attorney too. So we are going to probably discuss a lot. Amaury was in the private area and now he's a superintendent of bank in Panama. And lastly, Efrain Martinez, he asked me to tell you that he's not an attorney. We are talking about de-risking, professional de-risking. Efrain is the OCC, the regulator officer of the money regulator officer of the United States. He is an examiner of the norms or the Vice Secrecy Act. And before he was an auditor and in banking for 30 years. So this is the panel that is going to go with us. And I'm glad that a lot of people is here attending this session. I'm going to take 5 minutes to do a presentation that is going to be like an opening of these questions that I'm going to be asking the panelists. And the first thing is, what I'm worried about as a father, as a professor, and as a leader of companies, we are not complying the code. There is a big ethic crisis and value crisis that we are going through. And in this book, you can find a question about Benjamin Bayreuth. He's a Harvard doctor. And the code of behavior, he's putting in the table one big question. What are we not following the norms? It looks like the norms now is a suggestion, not an obligation. So the second point is the report of the UN. Or the American Association, so about money laundering, drug control and chemical control of last year, and the money laundering of last year, and the value of risk value of the Department of Treasury. I ask you to recommend actually to read all of these three books as the United States sees that phenomenon. And this amount that we are putting here, when we are talking about anti-money laundering policies, 3.1 billions are going through the bank and the business around the world. This is going to be a big alert and a red flag to all of us that they are involved in this task. And there is a way for the rankings of classification always serious because we want to be in the best spot and you start comparing with the one on the top of you or under you. So the 2023, one of the best countries with better positions and some other with not that good positions. And this is a technical clarification. This here, if you are not in the 4th round of TAF, you are not part of IN. So if you are looking to your country, if you are not belong to the to TAF list, you are not there. So I'm gonna give you a book in the University of Columbia. LPTAM, so is the AML and the FT and the mass destruction weapons. You're going to find there a lot of information about that. And this is at least the path list that we have been. And we got very excited about it, and we're going to talk a little bit about it, how close to the reality is this list about and what are we doing to fight crimes. But this compared with the efforts of the Treasury Department of the United States on the OFAC work job, what they are doing, that about the Linton list. I don't know why they call it that way, but you can call it the Trump list or my list, but that's the way we call it. But sanctions that we received last year, this is the amount. And here you can see in the Ukrainian war and in Russia, the sanctions. The same way I recommended to you an interview in the case of the Harvard book, but another, Moisés Benaim is another very is famous book writer in Venezuela, and that I also recommend you that book. There are countries that are here and some others not, and some other countries should be there, but they are not. If you really apply the rule for everybody, because the norms that they told us in October told us that no fourth round will be possible, but the country is not there, or some other countries should be there, and they are not in that list, because they complicate the business relationship around the globe. So I'm done with the introduction. In this book that is Backfires, Moisés Naim, I recommend it to you, the list, the programs of sanctions that they are in they are in the world. Are they effective or not? I'm going to ask you an important question about effectiveness. Please raise your hands who is married. If you're married, raise your hand. Leave it up if you're happy. Okay, so you know what is effectiveness and what is technical movement, and we don't want to ask more questions about that because people get complicated and embarrassed. But anyway, to close this, I'm worried about what this author is saying. Agape Domairas, it looks like the list and sanction is like penicillin. If you abuse of the medicine, you're going to be worse than the disease. So that's what we are really seeing at the moment. So let's start with the question. Since we are in the United States, we're going to talk about the complaint officers. In Colombia, people are very creative and they name themselves like that. And when I ask them if they get paid in dollars, they say, no, I get paid in pesos, so you are a suffering official. But here, let's start with our session. They know that they have like 5 minutes for each answer. And the first are going to be a global question for everybody, and then we're going to do a specific question depending on your position. So welcome and thank you very much. Let's go with the first one, and let's start with women, as it should be. So Natalia, the question is, can you tell me the challenges and that you see in the regulations in the United States and Latin American in the material for AML, CFT, and CFP? First of all, good morning. It's a privilege for me to be here with you today. The challenges that we see around the globe is that there are similarity and there are basic principles that you see across the globe in BSA, but it's robust and it's a lot, and it requests from you a lot. And when you work, you operate in different subdivisions, and you need to apply any norm of each area for that same law. And organization is based in the United States, you need to comply the norm of the USA. Doesn't matter if your operation is in the United States, but mine is in Panama. Panama, it has DSA norms, but what it rules is the federal jurisdiction. So that's when we are finding our deficiencies, because it means that your team work or compliance team doesn't have to be in the United States. And right now with the 2020, it was an American institution, needs to be located in the United States. But right now we are seeing in Puerto Rico that the International Bank is operating in an offshore. It's an American institution that is operating in Puerto Rico, but it has offices authorized overseas, and the contingency groups are in Latin America. So there is lack of knowledge, and that's why we are trying to change the norms. So it doesn't matter. The important thing is the compliance of the federal norms, and you don't need to take on consideration about the jurisdiction or different jurisdiction. And I think that's one of my biggest challenge. I think that phenomenon of organized criminals and the behaviors and the money laundering there is an increase on this line of criminals and proliferation of weapons. I'm really thankful with FIBA, and especially to be with Efraín and Natalia in this panel. Well, I believe it's worth it to put a context that the subjects that relates to prevention of money laundering and financing of terrorism and proliferation of weapons of mass destruction is a subject, is a dynamic subject. We could even have two standards in the way that we handle this subject, the United States, for example, because of the different levels of regulators and regulations that exist. My opinion is they have different challenges and even more complex than the ones that we have in Latin America. But in the United States, there is a lot of more institutionality, and this is a very important subject, and it's something that we need to work in our countries, like straighten the institutional law and find who is the responsible in the administration area or in the jurisdiction area in regard of these issues. So having said so, I understand that our own standards that takes a lot from fact, they evolve with time. So the countries need to have the ability to adapt sooner than later. We're more proactive conduct. And what happened to us? It happened in Panama around 2000, 2002. We were like an exemplary country. As I said yesterday, we have an experience going in a list and coming out of the list. At that time, when I'm saying 2002, we were like a model of a country, but we failed. We didn't take it long. So the policies they were in place, they were so that made us go back to the list 2 times and a 3rd time. So it's important that the lawmakers we have a clear vision that it's a dynamic subject, and the regulations and supervision of those regulations, they need to come hand to hand and at the same speed, knowing also. Juan Pablo was saying that nowadays not only is it important that we have the laws in place, the countries we need to be more worried about that those laws work and they comply with them, that they are effective with time, because the same way as the bank is actually already represented here today, but they are not the one that it takes the risk. The companies, they don't take the risk, the banks take the risk. So if we somehow can summarize what is the responsible of the regulator is that make sure that the institution, the financial institutions, they are doing their job based on the regulatory and law framework. And on the other side, we have the responsibility customer safe and the reputation as a country level, but also the institution. They need to make sure that they have a good reputation of their institution is not doesn't fail. So during that, we're gonna go to 2 minutes. Thank you, Mauri. So, Pauli was saying the regulator and the examiner. You know, the superintendents, as a definition, they have 3 vocations. One regular, they investigate, and the other one is to sanction. But this is not the case of the OCC in the United States. That's why Efraín is here with us to ask him why, based on the discussion that we're having, how you understand those risks and those challenges in the vision of the American Union. Good morning. Antes de comenzar, before starting, I feel the need to say this. Everything that I say here is my personal opinion. It's not my agency opinion necessarily. On the other hand, I'm happy to be here and thank you for inviting me. I'm gonna put some certain points on the table. And if you have any question, please let me know. There are many things that I want to talk to you, and I don't have that much time. As my peer said, there are changes in the structure of each superintendents of each country. The way the OCC operates, that is basically the regulator, but we are not the lawmakers, and we are not the one that send people to the jail. We just examine the banks, and we give qualification to the banks. We write exemptions when they have any issues, and some higher risk problems. They go to the district office, and there they get analyzed, and they decide what to do with it. But if the problem is bigger than that, so in that case, the subject goes to Washington, and Washington is the one that decides if there is a concern, order, or other type of action that needs to be taken. So if the subject is very big, it goes to FinCEN. That is the top. It's the biggest agency of the whole that is related with the SA in the United States. And if the problem is even worse than that, the Justice Department is the one that participates, and that's the one that makes people accountable and put people in jail. So it's not me. I'm the examiner only. So I want to clarify that because it's very important that you know that we are organized that way to be fair. We are fair, and we try to follow the process that we need to follow to give a penalty to a bank or a concern order or a big criticism. Is very difficult, and I need to convince a lot of people before that happens. So I want to start with this. Besides that, I'm going to also talk briefly about certain things that I believe that there are challenges. For example, the Transparency Act, the beneficial ownership is something that is walking, and it looks like it's going to start December of next year with all the requirements and everything. My personal opinion, I believe that it's going to be a little bit behind. This year is an election year, so we don't know what's going to happen. For that reason, it's possible that the machinery that they are establishing to send all of this information from you, from the clients, to the database is getting behind. So it's probably that it takes a little bit longer. But the date that so far is January of next year. Besides that, I want to tell you two or three things more quickly. I'm waiting for some changes that need to become on FIFEC manual. Is like the BSA Bible, as I call it. It's a manual that exchanges. We revise very often. I don't know if the revisions are going to come out this year or next year. And it's going to include the loan section and the monitoring of the loan section. They're going to expand that section. And for me, it's very important because you're going to determine the financial statement of each bank. In the assets, the million of dollars is in the loan wallet. And that's an area that you don't cover much in the BSA department. So when that's going to happen, I don't know if it's going to be this year or next year, but it's on its way. Also on the loan is a geographic targeting order. This special order that FinCEN puts down, that it takes 6 months, that it has to do with the sale of mortgage transactions in the United States and some other countries that they don't have financing. So financial targeted orders, FinCEN has found a lot of problems with that information that they have received, that I'm not surprised that if they're going to be a change and they're going to write something in regard of loans. So this is the second area. It's going to touch the loans area. And the third area that is very important, that has to do with this, is the issue about the attorneys. The attorneys the Bar Association, American Bar Association, is adjusting and is writing some guidance for the attorneys, lawyers, so they don't belong as a part of the AML. So there is a pressure on the American government and the international agencies that the attorneys need to follow, and they need to be part of the BSA. They need to be an obligated person. That's something that is also being considered. I believe that it's going to be hard if that happens, because in this country a lot of the politicians are attorneys as well. So I don't know if this is going to happen anytime in my life, in this lifetime. These two in here in the panel are very good, by the way. Other things that I want to tell you so briefly is a matter about de-risking. I don't want to touch that much on de-risking, but I'm going to give you some suggestions. I worked in banks for 30 years, and basically the important thing here is, for what I have found out in Miami myself, in that they don't open accounts to anybody, to any MSB, or even in the correspondent bank. They are having issues about it, and I want you to know they don't happen to account to inside the United States or outside. It's not only for the people outside of the United States. I have heard people here that tells me, and they always tell me, why you don't have a company that exchange checks for American people? We don't have it, a lot of risk. Why do you don't have that for the for the people outside of the United States or a non-profit? So the decision, and they always keep saying that they don't want it. It's not for us. We talk about business here, but we always ask why. We back up that you open a bank account. There are a lot of MSB that they are very good. Some others, they have very good internal control, but at the end, it's a decision. It's a American bank decision if they do it or not. But they don't do it for their people. They don't do it for the people outside of the United States either. And I think it's more of the rentability problem more than anything, profitability problem. So it's when you go to a bank, if you want to open an account or whatever, my advice is that show the bank how you and the relationship between you and them is going to be profitable. And you need to focus yourself on that area and the internal control that you are having in putting in BNC in your bank. That is the same. They are the same that the one they are putting here in the United States. It's important that they see you at the same level. And some other thing that I have done when I was in the bank myself, I was sharing costs. I was telling them, I was telling my correspondent bank to pay for certain revisions that I was requesting to do, and it's a small cost, but it helps on the relationship. I had problem with an account that it was moving $200 millions a year, and it was a complex account. And I told them, let's make business. I'm gonna give you, I'm gonna pay for the advisor. I'm gonna put the questions, and I'm gonna pay for it. And you want to pay part of it, and they did the job, and we accepted. So you need to be more proactive, more than ever, in this subject to be able to find the business relations for your accounts, okay? And lastly, that I want to mention, and I'm sorry that I'm taking so long, is that it's time to change. What I see in the banks is that in the Department of BSAs, they are doing the same thing that they are doing 20 years ago. They have the same monetary laws, the same profile. They do everything manually. They don't change the focus on the risk that they are doing before. They don't make effort to find patterns. Even if they just look at small accounts, they just have small challenges, and they are not willing to change. I'm inviting them to change. So, thank you. We can conclude several things. One, that Natalia is the one that the only one that is complying with with timing, and the second is that Mauri has a lot to tell, and third one, there is a lot of advice and a lot of good things to tell, not only for the American citizens, but also for the Latin American banking. For example, Natalia, how to regulate or balance the federal regulation of the United States versus an offshore bank? What's happening on the island? in Puerto Rico, we have two types of institutions: the commercial banks that they are supervised for the AC and the CAFC, and plus is the international bank, that is a group of international bank and banking institution at the international level. So those are under the supervision of the OCC, and that's is pro-industry, pro-investment, pro-incentivization of the economical part of the island. What happened? If you have a law that is the goal of the law is to be an incentive for the economy, and they are based in 1989. The law hasn't evolved, and it hasn't evolved the practice and the risk that Puerto Rico is facing. So there is a vacuum of regulation in Puerto Rico, because the industry have grown so fast and so quickly, and that became a risk for the island. And that risk, there were 89 banks on Puerto Rico in 2021. Then the risk assessment of money laundering came out, and they found that those entities were on a high risk, and they became a high risk entity, the whole Puerto Rico. So 3 years it had taken to the federal institution to fill that gap. So how are we doing? We need to implement regulations, local regulations, to our internal banks. Be transparent, give them the opportunity to go to the office and give them the guidelines, and to do some framework to the institutions so they can grow in a robust way. At the same time, the office have changed the way they interact with the institution, and every time we bring a message more important of how important that even if you are in Puerto Rico, that you are a gap institution, the compliance with the federal norm is not an option. It's something that you need to comply with, and that message has resonated in the whole United States, especially when they put the same $14 million were put was the fee that they needed to pay for not complying, and that is helping us to get out of the list of institutions that they are not complying, and we have been reducing the risk in 60 institutions and less, and only 60 now, and before 89. So we're working on it. This narrative has changed. We have amended the law in a way that is not pro-institutional law, and we have created a balance between the business and the regulation. The risk have changed, the industry have changed, the institution, they need to change to an evolution and evolve with the regulation. So we need to create that balance, because only you are in the territory, and if you don't have a federal regulation, they need to know that if you are in a federal territory, it's not optional, and you need to have that. It's going to be more robust for some law that the federal government is going to implement. So we need to be solid and be robust, that it can be hand to hand or operate the same way that as any other federal institution. Okay, let's talk another bank in Panama. Last week, they came out of the list of the European Union. So another applause. Good job, Panama. So if somebody likes poetry, we always talk about strategic and tactics. So let's talk about due diligence in banking. Who make Panama? What Panama did to get out of those two lists that affects the reputation of a country. Thank you, Juan Pablo. I think the main lesson that we have learned during this last endeavor to get out of the list is that the ideal thing is not to be in the list. That's the first lesson, and we learned that. But since we were, obviously, we need to organize it in such a way that we could manage as a project to get out of the list. And it's a project where not only it belongs to one institution, multiple institutions are involved, and each one of it under the responsibility that the law is controlling them, and with a leadership, with a clear leadership. That's the second from lesson from my point of view. Goal that is a common goal. So with a good leadership to allow us as a country, not only the political, the area of political level in the country as a president, but also the technical authorities, the bank superintendent, and other regulators from other areas also as a group together, and also the industry, the private sector, that it was a very important element in the achievement of coming out of this list. Having this level of sensibility, of knowledge, knowing that we needed to do at least what we decided to do, or that we decided to do in the action plan of 2019, that there were 5 tours, one more complex than the other, but there were things that they were coming from zero. For example, the private registry. Only this morning I was listening that in the United States they are still in the process of making it happen. I was listening to Ephraim talking about the attorneys since 2015, the attorneys that they represent, that they are working on representation of third parties for some identities. They are obligated since 9 years ago to comply. So understanding that possibly today we can be considered as another country that is a model, we are initiating the process to prepare ourselves for the 5th round of evaluation that is planned for a few years out. So the important thing is not to be in the list, because obviously the emphasis is in going out or being delisted. The idea is not to be in the list and not be always ready to one element or two elements. I will say one, the reputation. That affected us a lot. Also, some events happened that didn't help at all. A subject about the letters in Panama or Panama documents, and we have talked about it. Not always, but we have said a lot about that. But not all the money was in Panama, because that is the perception, and I think we're going to talk about the perception and reality. But the money was not located in Panama on one side. On the other hand, and not less important, the competitivity. Every country tried to generate confidence and elements that allow the being attracted from foreign business, foreign investment, but we try to make the best business. Not every business, the best business, and I think the country understood that. And from now on, I hope the reality is different, and we could continue being a model country. Okay, let's start closing. There is one question that is specific for Ephraim and one for each one of us. I'm asking you to be a little bit short in your time. Ephraim, talking about the OCC purpose on the United States, what can the economy or the financial entities in Latin America, how can the reputation or what is the vision that they have, the OCC has, because of some Latin American country gets some business that they don't have good reputation? Well, my job is to examine the banks, so don't get into transactions that involve any name that is on any list of any blacklist of the American government, because it's going to be denied. There is nothing else that I can tell you about. I don't work with the laws, but I'm the examiner only. But on the other hand, as we know, some of these sanctions that of the United States, of some other countries, the European Union is doing a lot working on sanctions, and those sanctions are affecting a lot of countries. Not only the country that is right in the sanction, but it's also involved you as well. My advice in that sense is to speak with the superintendents of your country and telling them, what is the position? What is your position about this subject? Are we going to comply? We won't be able to comply. What are we going to do? So the superintendency of that country need to tell you what is the position of the government, to tell you, and they need to tell you how do they see the issue, and how can they supervise that. When you have that information, my advice is have a meeting with the manager, the big management, and the attorneys of the bank, and make a decision on how you're going to handle that type of transaction if they come up. And third, adjust your policy, your procedure policy. So in case that one of these names come up in sanctions, of foreign transactions, you know that you need to check and review, and it has involved a particular process, that what are you going to do with that client and with those particular transactions, and in that way you're going to protect yourself. I believe, and it looks to me that the step for you to get protected or protect yourself as a bank, to speak with your government officers, with your superintendents, and tell them, how do you want us to handle this? I think if you look, I think the possibility that one of the names on this black list is it gets into your bank with that name to open an account. It's not big, but it's possible. I see that. So it's a subject that you need to bring with your supervisor, with your managers, or anybody of the governance of your country, and tell you how do they see that issue, so you can protect and you can adjust your laws and your processes. And if you want, in the next panels, ask the question. Ask them. They make more money than me. They can answer you. Well, let's close up. Natalia, this question is for everybody, but even though that we know that the evaluation of the risk of the AML, FT, and mass destructive, we need to find a relationship. And the question is, what we look in the evaluation, the index that is reflecting the result on how are we fighting the AML, FT. I think that we are looking at the back, and a special example is the Puerto Rico and also in Panama. We have come to correct the errors of the people that came before us. We got the problems already, but it was already a problem, so we have to solve the issue. So we need to fill the gap of 5 years, and we need to keep operating. We need to keep doing the supervision of those entities based on those law, and we need to work every day to set the record straight. We need to take all the actions to make things happen when things are not happening, or make the institution keep functioning, because if not, the existence can be jeopardized. So we need to designate to make it valid. In Puerto Rico, we had the fortune that they were in the high risk in 2022, and then they removed us to the list. But it went hand to hand with all the actions we took and what the measures we took for the money laundering in the island. We're here in a dichotomy that it could be a perception or reality, but it looks like we make decision with the perception and not with the reality. I think they go back hand to hand, because I think the advertisement is like those things are retroactive, and it creates a perception, and that's what everybody says. People that are not in Puerto Rico, the people that they are not being supervised, they don't need to know the reality because they're not suffering from that reality. But a lot of advertisement, you start changing the narrative, and I think both coexist until the record is being set, until you put everything in documents. El Spanglish in Puerto Rico is an official language, so I can talk like that. Well, we're in Miami, and we can do the same thing, so I understood you perfectly. Amaury, let's say taking back for what you tell us, how you came out of the list or you got delisted. So el punto es that is the evaluation of the risk assessment. And they usually they put you a color when they give you a rank. For us, the evaluation, the national risk assessment, as Natalia was saying, there is a picture of a particular moment, but we consider those that they are very useful tools. They're useful, but we need to work, we need to analyze them, we need to put it in a context where, or at least from the outside, how do they look us, the risk level at the national level, and some other evaluations that are very important, like in sectors, in different areas for issues, talking about the financial of terrorism or jurisdictional institutions. They are always a tool from which we need to change one or two variables that we need to analyze. The Basilea measure of adjustment is an element that is very important because it's an element of perception. Normally, we were talking about the sources of information normally are open sources, mass media, news, headlines, so that can reflect in some ways a reality that is absolute or is partial of what is going on or what a jurisdiction is going through. So I think it's important to take those elements from some others to, so when you are doing the risk analysis that each entity is doing for their clients, their products or utilities or profits, they need to put those, take in consideration those elements more than others that you can take in consideration, like type of products, geographic location, so they can have a level of sensibility more down to earth to the risk, the residual risk. And you need to take each one of the institutions and the moment of establishing a new product for saying something in particular. So they are useful, but it's not all. And because not necessarily reflect the reality, at least the most updated one. As you said, we need to look in the back mirror, and we need to look and also on the mirror next to your door, and you need to look at different mirrors and different angles. So Efrain, to close, the vision of the United States, as we were saying, the panel. The United States is mentioned in your documents when you are evaluating your risk as a risk country. As you said before, in the report in the SAR evaluation in the United States that we qualify themselves as a high risk management country. For me, as they were saying, this SARS that the organisms are creating is a beginning, is not an end. They have part of information that you need. They don't have everything. So what I do when I'm going to examine it, the first thing I do, give me your BSA's risk assessment. I see that, and I said how you say what is your rank of exposure you have. And you put your wallet, and you have that, how many account here, how many account there, we have check, we have that, we have a PPA, we have everything. So then I see how you link all of that to those reports. So the report is just the beginning. You have the other part, the other information that is needed. So when you do that, you measure the risk of your own banks, and you're going to get into a conclusion that is the other part of the risk assessment. And you're going to determine what are you going to monitor, what are you going to do manually, you're going to swing open doors, how you're going to do it every quarter, you're going to do it every 6 months, how frequent, and with all of that, you can manage the risk that you have identified and that you have. And that's what I expect when I do a risk assessment. This report is a complement of your risk, and that's what I'm going to see reflected in those transactions and in those reports. Thank you. So let's have a surprise question. They don't know it, so they change us the clock. They give us more time. Awesome. If you want, if not, we finish here. If you want to keep going, let's keep going. So, the good, the bad, and the ugly of the regulations of AML. And you cannot repeat. You cannot repeat the same thing. So let's start with Natalia. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Or if not, if you need more time, let me start with Amaury. Well, we come from regulations and law. We work a lot with law. We are attorneys. And I believe that it's like everything. Maybe it's an element, and I'm gonna go out of track, but it's always easier to comply if there is a conviction of what you're gonna do. If it's a requirement, because the superintendent of the governance is requesting you to do it, if that's the case, it's easier to comply. But if you're convinced that what you are going to do has a value or adds a value. Otherwise, sometimes we drag our feet, we try to comply because they are requested, but we're not convinced about what we are doing. So sometimes happens that the regulation, that by the way is minimum, it's not the higher standard for each institution, a banking entity, in this case, established based on themselves the levels of additional levels that they want to add to be able to manage the risk. So I will say that is an opportunity also. So the banking institutions, based on those minimums requirements, and those minimums, or the origin of those minimums, comes from an international standard. So that way the bank institution can establish those all of those other requirements depend on the appetite of risk that institution has. So at the end this morning I heard it in one of the panels, when the regulator, the supervisor, gets there to inspect, somewhere they are trying to make sure is that the bank has the policies, that the bank is complying with the regulations, and somehow, if for any reason there is any other not compliance or default, be able to show that in fact we are humans, it was a default, but we had the interest and we had all the willingness to do things correctly. So there is, and I want to conclude this is the judgment of the supervisor. The judgment with the knowledge of the supervisor. That's a very subjective issue, because sometimes it doesn't go hand to hands with the rigorous part of the law or the norm. That experience, that learning to smell situation of an institution can give us that element to establish if the bank really has acted in a with good intentions, in good faith, and probably with a compliance or a finding. Doesn't have all the elements to be considered too appropriate to establish a sanction. That is part of the bad things that happen in those situations. And be clear, that is not the reason of the supervisors of putting sanctions. It's part of the procedure, but it's not the final, the end, the goal. My answer is going to be more concise. The good is that the norms for the AML, they have the goal to prevent a crime and the home security of each country and protect institutions. The institutions, they are not there. You can lose a lot of profits if that is not controlled as well. So usually when the controller detects those deficiency is after a test. And when that happens, the problem is out of your hands when it's an institution took like a compliance as an option, so, like most of the time there is a AML issue that is out of your hands, and when you find out, it's too late. It always a lot of things have happened, and a lot of millions have passed through your bank going to the federal system, and we have seen it in $4 million transactions every year, and 3 years we have seen that for the past 3 years. So that's why I'm mentioning this, because we have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's the ugly. And now Ephraim, on the point of view of the examiner. The good things in the AML laws, the ones that we have at the moment, I think we have several countries that have been able to establish a system, some structures of anti-money laundering that they are very good, and those helps are helping some others. They share information with other countries to help each other. Colombia, Panama, and the OCC too. That's why I'm here. So all of that helps. Other thing that is very good is there is knowledge in globally. The approach needs to be risk-based. I'm not only saying because I want to say it. At OCC, we are trying to change things the way we do it, and we have been doing that for the last year. And the things in the government is very slow, as you know, but those are good things. Other thing that is very good, we are in the moment that is a key moment to change. We need to change what we are doing, because we have been doing the same thing for the past 20 years, and we know now, and a lot of you know at the moment, and they're not going to give you more money. They're going to put more sanctions, so they are obligating us to go risk-based. So those things, all of that is positive. Other thing that we have is FIBA. We share knowledge here, and we speak, and we talk about laws, and we talk about how you do it, how she does it, and how we do it in Colombia. We exchange ideas, and we exchange solutions. The bad, well, when there is an issue, the repercussions are very hard, and that's what we have. And the ugly is that you gotta see me when I come. That's all. Thank you very much. Well, I'm gonna close with something to reflect about. We need to change paradigm. We need to see the areas of compliance as an investment, not as expense. I come from a country that it has suffered a lot of the impasses of the cocaine and the fentanyl now, and the incursion of this jurisdiction that they import the drugs with all the damages that they are causing in the community. And the third thing that is not a group job, it's not a group work, it's a teamwork. And that's what made Panama be delisted. It was a big effort with a work behind scenes that nobody knows, but at the end they were able to make it happen. And the last point for me, we need more presence and more commitment of the general managers. The area will be needed to be full of the owners of the banks and the commercial areas, because I don't need to convince you that we need to fight against AML, because we need to convince everybody else that the work that you guys are doing is you need to are like a police officer of the compliance of the laws, and you need to do this because to make this business profitable. So I really thank you, Natalia and Mauri. Yeah, Ephraim Martinez from OCC on the United States, and all of you, I want to thank you. Very kind.
Dímelo.